My name is Nico. This is Brighter Days, Darker Nights, and today I am sitting down with Dr. Neel, who is an expert in all things floor of the mouth and more. And I'm so excited to share what he's working on. He has some wonderful opportunities coming up for you to learn more from him. But first, let's introduce you for everyone who's new to Dr. Neel. I first was introduced to him by Lindsay Cantu over at BirthFit, who's another amazing soul doing great work to help mamas and babies. And so she recommended Dr. Neel. I met him on one of the BirthFit calls inside of her membership, which is great, and was immediately blown away by the level of storytelling and how it related to approaches with regard to tongue tie is the big issue that really connected with me because so many moms are having issues with that. So it really made me excited to hear someone who had a perspective that was accepting of surgery as part of the possibility, but not as surgery as the go-to and not necessarily the end of the course. And so, Dr. Neel, welcome.
Thanks, Nico. It's fun to be here. Yeah, I'm excited about all the conversation little parts that we're going to have. And I loved that meeting you on that call or the Zoom rather, with Lindsay and BirthFit. I just remember when Lindsay and I were talking about doing that, we originally had 1 day plan. It didn't work out. And I was going to be busy teaching my Floor of the Mouth course in Phoenix. But anyways, all that says, like, it ended up at the day that it was, and then she's she was just like, "You need to know Nico," and then Kat on my team, who's also, um, helps with BirthFit, she's like, "You gotta check out Nico's Substack." Just it's such a great resource, and she's
Love that.
amazing, and so I feel like that was just such a good provocation to me, and I thank you, Nico. I said this, but it was like linking up with you. I interviewed you on my podcast, Compromise to Alchemize. I love your storytelling, and then I just kind of was like, my wife Dawn had already encouraged me to do Substack, so I had written some articles, and I just was out of a writing kind of phase and into more podcasting, but then it was like your inspiration that nudged me back in. So I've written a few articles and I just republished a few that I wrote over a year ago. Just this morning, I republished them. So thanks to you. Thank you for that nudge. I'm so happy to be back in it.
That is so great. And I know that your topics are so heartfelt and you're so honest and one of those people who isn't inhibited by the distance of the internet and that you
Mm.
are someone who I really feel like you can actually make a connection with, which is wonderful because that's something that we all need these days. I mean, anytime we're humans, we're social, and to be able to have information, but also have someone who's actually available is just amazing, and you're really good at connecting there. So I'm excited about your Substack and where it goes from here because I know that you have a lot of really great things to say. And also, your work with families is just so powerful for helping them resolve issues and drawing that connection all the way back to the time in the embryo and what's happening there and how that goes forward. So, how did you even come up with all of this stuff to think back to, from embryology? Because that's not something that most people are thinking about. But I know that you have done extensive thought into that. So I'm kind of wondering, like, where was the connection that you realized that that could be something you could talk about in a client session and see changes happening?
Nothing like having our own 9 years ago, our first of three kids, who was born. A midwife said, "Tongue tie. Do you know your daughter has a tongue tie?" I'm like, I have no idea what that is. I already been practicing for 8 years at that point as a chiropractor.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, so immediately, now I say that. And then, so it took us down the rabbit hole. And then I thought, wow, how many of these cases did I miss? How many of these babies grew up and I didn't help them? I didn't know how to help them. But with our daughter, Serenity, she born with a tongue tie, it was inhibiting, affecting feeding right away. It was uncomfortable for her. Improper lip seal with, lip tie, cheek ties, tongue ties. So she was getting all this air in. It was creating all this bloating and misaligning organs. And then the pain that would happen with when she tried to latch with my wife, that was that was really, really rough to see both of them, go through that. Um, so I'll just say that there was a village around me. I had good friends who we had friends who knew about this whole tongue tie journey. The midwife
Oh.
was a great first support, and then friends of ours, and they nudged us to do all kinds of body work. I did some of it. We took her to others who did what I didn't know how to do. And then it was still clear as day that there was such a severe, kind of tongue tie, lip tie, cheek tie that we had them released with a laser frenectomy by an amazing pediatric dentist in San Francisco Bay Area who is a great man, and he is an expert at seeing like babies 0 to 6 months for this. And we presented at the same symposium, full circle. We presented at the same symposium 2 years ago, and I'm going there this weekend. It's in a different place every year, but I'm going to go to Las Vegas to present at the symposium again. And he's also teaching. We'll hang out, and um, it's just being around providers like him. Then quickly, I started to see patterns. And anyways, long story short, I started to see these patterns in her, and then babies and kids and adults, and started to see these 70 areas in the body that I found when someone has a tongue tie or oral ties or narrow palate or, all these other issues that relate to this. Then it led me down that route of seeing where in the body do I need to address in order to free up tension in the mouth and vice versa. So, and I actually, you know what, I'll just kind of allude to the article that I republished today. I did three that I republished. One was about miscarriage that we had before that my wife went through before we had our three. So to see her, well, the article tells you I wasn't like I've like, I was dealing with food poisoning and I passed out, and then she had a miscarriage, and I was not like, I was literally in the
Oh.
living room or like right outside the bathroom, like passing out, like just not feeling good. But looking back, I'm like,
Wow.
well, couldn't you have pulled it together to be there for your wife while she was literally passing 10 weeks old?
Oh.
So I really just grieved that I wasn't there for her, like in the moment as much, but we grieved together. And then we had three amazing kids. So I know that's also a redemptive story that not all get to experience. So I wrote two articles about that, but then I wrote the third article, which was from grieving to birthing. And anyways, I wrote about like I this kind of pathway to me defeating asthma by starting to run. And then, then we had our daughter Serenity. And so it was a year before where I started to get into intuitive movement and unwind fascia on myself. And
Mm.
I found patterns all throughout my body that when I released those, they released this tension at the back of my throat. But I didn't know I had a tongue tie until after my daughter was born, saw that she had one, looked in my mouth, my dad's, my brother's, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this has been going on. So
Wow.
so I look back at like where did I first learn about it? Well, without knowing it, it was through myself, and it was
Mhm.
through exploring what would unlock tension in my whole body. And I will say I found freedom in my body in that year before she was born that I had never had, and I know that's part of why I was able to go from not being able to run down the street without wheezing horribly to running a 50 or 250 Ks, 31
Wow.
miles in 2 months. But intuition and my daughter have been some of the greatest teachers that I've had, so I definitely know that that's why I know what I know is through being available for what I would learn through journeying.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, compromised to alchemized is definitely an accurate name for your
Mm.
podcast. That's something you're obviously embodying in your life,
Yeah.
to take your own journey and turn it into things to actually be helpful for people who are along the way and
Mhm.
acknowledging, the help that you have also had there. That's amazing. So to go back to one of the things that you said there, this was something
Mhm.
that really opened my mind up about tongue ties and what could be done about them is you said that tension in a distant part of the body could influence the mouth. How does that work, and what are the channels for that? You said there were, like, 70 parts
Yeah.
of the body connected or something like that?
Yeah. Well, there's like, thank goodness we have so many people who are like have had to tackle trying to solve these problems because, and I will say like Facebook forums and other places like that where moms have just written and said, "What's going on? What do I do?" You know, you're some of the ones there's some of the ones that have really, like, opened up the democratization of healthcare to, like, let's just bring resource, and so, while some of the times the forums can be, like, stressful when I'm like, I just see people what they're going through, I try to chime in and write and comment, and I don't always have the right answer, but I yeah, I think that it's so there's people like Tom Myers who wrote, Anatomy Trains, and he's a well-known structural
Yes.
integration expert that learned from Ida Rolf, and he has that, picture of the deep front line of fascia from tongue to toes. Michelle Emmanuel, she's a well-known occupational therapist that also does a lot of manual therapy. She's got a picture of a baby with the way fascia distributes. So
Mm.
for sure, both of them have, before me, really started to open up this dialogue. And then osteopaths of old, they were the ones to understand embryology, probably the first and probably the most in a practical way. So they have, you get around an osteopath who's been around these legends. Um, and I've been around many of them where they say, yeah, definitely through the kidney, this fascia tightens. And but I think what for me I was looking for was, I mean, I didn't know any of that. I wish I did. I just started to follow patterns
Mm.
intuitively.
Mm.
And as I looked over the data, like after a few years of all my findings, I'm like, these points just keep repeating with a little variation. So I copied, I can't, and I'm like, I'm just saying, I'm this, what's going on here? And I'm definitely a pattern recognition person,
Yeah.
but I didn't effort to pattern recognize that because I was a dad struggling to know what do I do for my daughter, and then our other two, they had the same. My two
Mm.
sons had tongue tie, and it manifested differently in them and affected them differently. And there's a big conversation here of like, did they all need releases? They did get releases, frenectomies, but should we have done it with our middle one? I don't know, because 'cause he's got that phenotype that we talk about in the tongue tie world where his body heals like a tiger, just tight, and so that wound site reclosed and reattached, and we got it revised for a second time, but I'm like, I don't know. I think that he could have been okay without it, but then our 3rd, he had a misaligned jaw that at birth, when he was born, like, really underweight, due to what we think was placental insufficiency. So the first 3 months of our lives, we were scared solid. Like, is he gonna be okay? And
Mm.
so the frenum was restricted so severely, so it so affected his jaw that even though it was less of a restriction than our daughter's from the first, she was born the first, it still was affecting him enough that we got it released. But, I've seen since then in, like, this last 9 years of working with this, I'm like, there's so many times when the release is what's needed, and then there are so many times when people come in and they've had them and they've not done what they were supposed to do, and I'm like, "Yeah, I feel you, this is hard," and then I'll find a thyroid gland that just needed to be released subtly, and all of a sudden, the floor of the mouth loosened and the tongue could move, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, the latch is better."
Mm.
Or the right kidney most of the time, or, it's the foot, the ankle, and so I've kind of like narrowed down these 70 points into 4 main regions that I'm calling the floor 4. And again, I didn't create it because I was trying to come up with something. I'm like, 70 is just too many. And I've taught
It
it to
is.
body
Yeah.
workers, taught at symposia, and like people are like, Neil, these are dentists and experts. They're like, Neil, could you just like, seriously, could you make it like a top 10? I did that. And somebody's like, "That's too many. Could you do less?" And I made a top 7. But it was my wife, Dawn, who one day she's like, "Neil, what do you think about less than that?" Nothing like, it's not just the words she said, it's the wisdom she has. It just went boom right through her into me, and I'm like, all of a sudden I saw these highlighted areas. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, there's these 4 main regions." So, I started shifting my teaching to at the bodywork group for my floor of the mouth tour that I just taught all over the US, I shifted it to the floor 4, and it's really catching on more. And then not only that, like in all my sessions, I usually teach parents like how to unlock these floor 4 areas, 'cause I
Ooh.
need them to be able to help their babies without getting to me, 'cause they can't, right? So, I started to
Yeah.
teach parents how to do these releases, we do videos, and anyways, I'm gonna plug in my laptop. I just realized that it's low on charge. So, I know that for me, what was really important was that I didn't just, like, have this for the purpose of, um, showing people a theory, but more like in the moment, we just like thinking back to being a dad of a baby. Now I'm a dad of a 9, 7, and 5-year-old. And I take care of kids as well, like older kids and adults who need this work too. But we need things that work now. We can't wait. And also, my other big thing was like I was doing these intraoral massages and jaw muscle massages, and I'm like, why is this uncomfortable for these babies? People like what? There's something going on here. I don't feel like I want to elicit this kind of like cortisol spike, right? We're trying to get rest and digest. And so that led me to look in the body, and I started to
Mhm.
find these areas where I'm like, wow, the floor of the mouth is rigid. And then all of a sudden, the right foot, I release it and the floor loosens, and it's barely uncomfortable at all for the baby for loosening the tongue on its own, regardless of whether there was a surgery or not. But especially when there was one, that area is more sensitive. So I think out of like a desire to do less harm, a desire to like make this less stressful, I just kept searching and looking, and I'm like, where in the body could hold? And then I think we talked about this on my podcast a little bit, maybe. Um, but I was like, where else? It maybe isn't a muscle, fascia, bone, or organ, or lymph, or glymph sensory issues. So I turn off the lights, or I play a soothing sound. Floor of the mouth will loosen on certain babies, kids,
Mm.
adults. Or even like I went into that empathic realm and I would be like to a mom holding her baby, I'm like, is somebody saying your baby is too much? And I'm like, do you have a grandma staying with you? And she's like, yeah, my husband's mom. Okay. Is she like this, like with her face,
Mm.
and is she like just holding that baby and she's just nodding her head. And I'm like, did she I don't know if she got the love she needed, because I don't wanna judge that grandma. I'm like, maybe she just didn't get the love she needed. I don't know. I wish I could be there for her, but in this moment, this is about you and your baby. Because this mom was worried that the baby's tongue had reattached, right? So,
Yeah.
after a frenectomy, and then there's this window of time after where you wanna keep it supple so it doesn't re-tense, and I'm like, "Yeah, what's going on? This doesn't feel like it's reattached. What's going on here?" And that's the question I've asked so many times that has opened me up to the infinite wisdom of the galaxies and the universe and God and things like that, where I started to hear that you're too much. And that's what led me to ask a little further in my inner mind. I'm like, Grandma, hear that. So then I asked her. But you know what was crazy is as soon as she said, yeah, my husband's mom is here, and then that's all we needed to do. I rechecked and the baby's floor of the mouth has loosened. The tongue
Oh,
had freed up, and it was a completely different tongue. Like, it was
whoa.
crazy. So,
Mhm.
things like that, just going deeper, deeper, deeper to ask the questions of, "What is going on? What else could I release or validate, or direct someone in to see change right now?" And it doesn't always cure everything, but I just feel like those are in this quantum biology world that you know so well, these are the ways that I love harnessing, whether it's light or sound or emotion or validation, harnessing whatever it is that's going on that's under the root, that's under the root, that's under the root. Because if we can just see change happen and relief happen, then I am one relieved person for sure.
That is so beautiful, and that's such a important perspective because that was what originally got me interested in this whole tongue tie issue in the first place was hearing from
Yeah.
moms who had had the baby released, and then they were still having the trouble, and they're like, "Why did I go and do that when it didn't even help?" Obviously, there've been other, people who I've seen, like a teenage boy recently who got his tongue tie released, and he was, like, hopping with joy. He was so happy. He's like, "Look, I can stick my tongue out." 'Cause he'd,
Yeah.
grown up his
Totally.
whole life with it being tight, and so for him, he was, like, jumping with joy. I don't know what the longer term, outcomes there were, but for the people who it doesn't work, then it also introduces this whole load of doubt and confusion in people because they're looking at it and they're wondering, should I do this or should I not? So and so said that they did it and it solved all their problems, and so said they did it and everything didn't, they still were having issues or maybe other issues happened. So what you described of that of like a something needing validating being actually a key is a really actually quite novel idea, even though it makes complete sense when you tell it that way and be like, "Oh, yeah, of course." And, people are mimicking facial expressions and, like, there's a whole, area of tension that's carried in the emotional body. But we don't think of the emotional body as being directly physical so that you could actually have hands on someone and be like, "Oh, your emotional
Totally.
body changed and your physical body is now different," is a totally revolutionary idea. Maybe for a body worker, that makes sense, but I remember, like, when I went to a chiropractor for a sports injury, I don't remember anything like
Keep
that
talking, I'm gonna grab my charger real quick.
Oh, yeah.
I'm listening.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah. So I've been to body workers before who definitely weren't asking me about what was going on with me emotionally. And so I don't think that everyone necessarily has that perspective that is doing body work, although obviously there are. So I love that you are a person who's doing that. And I wish that there were, more of that available for moms. And that's why I'm so glad that you are doing this teaching that's happening, through the internet, I know that you have a program that moms can take that, to learn some of these different facial things, right? Some of, like, movements and, like, what's that involve? Like,
Yeah.
what is a virtual program? Obviously, best is in person, which people can reach you in, Santa Barbara, and you travel quite a
Yeah.
bit. So I know that you are in clinic a lot. So for those of you who are on the West Coast, there's that opportunity to get the real Dr. Neel in person. But for everyone else, like, what does that look like in a virtual sense? Like, how could someone be approaching this knowledge that you have? That's obviously so much more than just physical.
Yeah, there's like, um I think there's a lot of beautiful times that I've had virtual visits with somebody, um, and just kind of problem solving in the moment. And like, if it's somebody, I'm gonna have them maybe even assess in their mouth, and then I'm gonna visually inspect, and but I'm gonna feel, I'm gonna empathically feel, like I
Mm,
can feel their kidney that's misaligned. I just feel things in my body. So for me, the virtual format is not as good as in person. True, but because usually operate, whether I'm muscle testing or energetically feeling or intuitively sensing, or, you know, I don't know if I was telling, this wasn't recently enough because I was working with someone in the Bay Area, and I started to feel a pinch in my like gut, and then I was like, "Oh, that's my liver," and I could feel where it was really pinchy. And then I asked that mom about what she was feeling, that person, what she was feeling, and it had to do with some trauma. And so what's crazy, I use the floor of the mouth as like a window and a vantage point because clearly the whole family did have tongue tie and narrow arches and all that, but that's not what she was there for. She was dealing with a lot of vertigo, and she was dealing with a lot of pain and neck problems. So when I found that liver pinch through my own liver hurting, and then I asked her, and it had to do with trauma and alcohol abuse from someone else, then as soon as we discussed it enough, like over like a minute, she's on the table and I'm working with her, and the feeling left me, and that's my first clue. So I asked her,
mhm,
"So how you feeling?" And she was feeling different, but then I felt the floor of the mouth, it was way looser, and that sets up this cascade response where when the floor of the mouth frees, the lips, the cheeks free up, the jaw muscles free up, but then the head and the C1, C2, and the throat bone and the diaphragm and all the way down to the feet. And she just went into a state of suppleness, and it changed. I mean, and it changed, like greatly reduced her vertigo and the neck pain. That was an in-person experience, true. But in that case, like, I didn't do any body work to help the liver. I acknowledged and validated what had happened, and I could ascertain and perceive. um, so that's happened a lot through virtual, like, consults or experiences, to where I'm like, I feel that, and I wonder if, and through that, it releases. Some people do need the hands-on work, so in those cases, I'm like, okay, so if you got your baby there, I'll say, could you check inside your baby's mouth right there? Okay, now can you feel that area of the body? Now change, just massage that a little bit. Now check back in the mouth, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, it moves more easily, and the latch feels different when they test it out." So
Mhm.
that's like a one to one. I love that. I love helping because sometimes it's like it's unique and it's different for everybody. There's no
Mhm.
cookie cutter because sometimes even my 70 areas, it's like, well, we can't go through all of them anyways. But so it really depends. But I I do love to be able to do that, but yeah, I'm for sure as people are wherever they're at, they're not gonna be able to come, or even, like, I'm not gonna be able to get to everybody. That's why I've been teaching a lot more practitioners. And then in Santa Barbara, well, I've had people come who aren't practitioners, but you're a parent, you're a healer, or you might just want to learn it for, like, your family, and I've had people come to learn it just for their families, and so that there's like a 2-day training that I'm doing February or, March 12th, 13th in Santa Barbara for that. Then
Mhm.
I'm doing an advanced training right after that because some people who have learned, they're coming to learn again, and I'm like, "Okay, there's about 3 of them who I know are gonna be ones that I want to, like, carry on the work." And as I
Mhm.
put this into their minds and hands, they're gonna reach people at their geographic where they're at, but they're
Yeah.
also gonna be ones who teach, my technique and system moving forward because I might still have patients that I do see, and then I'm also, um there's a couple other ways that I'm, like, seeing this, like, on Nucalm, that's the app that's out there. It's a really amazing app. It's Nucalm. Later this month, we're meeting, and then by, like, next month or the month after, my audio meditation of the floor 4, how it's basically like 2 10-minute tracks on how you can unlock these areas. It'll be
Oh.
connected to the new calm frequencies that deliver healing to the body and
Mhm.
bring the mind into a supple state that help you shift brainwave states. So that'll be available through the app soon. I'm the newest contributor to their app. It's like a few others are on there that like Tony Robbins, Jim Quick, and Roger Love. So I'll be the one that's on there that's the first to introduce a healing modality through their technology. So it's pretty
Wow.
fun.
That's amazing. And so that will take someone through the 4 areas of the body and
Yeah.
help them to release them at home or wherever they are listening.
Yeah.
That's very accessible.
It's very accessible, and I like that, like, even if you didn't have my voice saying to do things, the frequency technology of Newcalm is so amazing. I use that app in my sessions. I put it on, and I, like, muscle test and see what people need when they need it, but I'm also then now anchoring my knowledge of the floor 4 and the body so that I can have people interact with the frequency to distribute those frequency benefits to different places through those somatic exercises. And I build in mindfulness because, like, sometimes it isn't like stretch this, loosen that. It's like, okay, so we've been there and done that. And some people have been to like so many amazing healers, body workers, manual therapists who've worked in their mouths, and I'm like, that's not where it is. It's your ab separation, right? The diastasis. And so I'll
Oh.
identify that, not just on postpartum moms, but there's a lot of kids with neurodivergence, right? That have issues with their midline, that tongue tie or not, right? That their brains didn't cohere the linea alba, the abs. And so even though Stanford says by the age of 5, will, most kids will heal their ab separation. But the crazy thing is, a lot of us didn't know. I didn't know. I wasn't taught this anywhere. Everybody's
This is the
born
first time I've heard that.
Everybody's born with diastasis on the planet. We all are. And through normal development, our abs come together. And
Mhm.
and but if they don't, they don't, right? So I've seen an 80-year-old man who has diastasis, and I'm working with him because even the guy who came in from Utah flew in to do a 2-day healing journey where we do like 9 hours of body work over 2 days, 3 3-hour sessions, and then 1 hour reintegration at the beach. That's like just to so people know like what it is. But one of the main pivotal things, and he's like 54, 53, is his diastasis, his ab separation, and he
Mhm.
didn't know he had it. Most of us don't. I had pretty bad ab separation. That's why growing up, I was, like, so hunched over, right? And
Yeah.
I couldn't even, like, hold myself up very easily. I just thought I was weak. I just grew up thinking I was a weak, you know, very weak person, but I didn't understand that because of my tongue tie and other things, my abs didn't come together. And so even though some people can compensate for that by training them and they stumble into ways to where they don't struggle as much from the issue of diastasis, I've seen people who like this woman, she's 34 years old, has like came in and she never had babies, right? She never had surgeries, and she had a really wide, like 2 to 3 inch diastasis, a gap
Hmm.
this wide that was about 3/4 of the way from
Hmm.
her sternum to her pubic bone. That's where the
Hmm.
abs connect, right? So
Wow.
she was like stunned. She's like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know, but this explains so much of my childhood." And she was kinda shocked, and I will say, like, there's kids, like, that are, like, 5 and 9 and 11 and 13. When I'm helping them through this is where violet light plays a huge role. You were mentioning, I was like, yeah, excited to talk about it because I started to, like, experiment with all these different colors of I saw a vision, and in that vision, I saw what I would do. So that's why I do usually what I do, right? So I got a purple laser, and this thing, I used it on the palette for, like, somebody, and instantly it made their abs come together. And
Okay,
so
so
that
this is amazing because I one of my most popular posts on my Substack is "Tan your belly, heal your diastasis," because
Yeah,
that is how I healed it after, I had a very stressful pregnancy with my 3rd, and my it popped out, and I was
yeah,
looking down, I'm like, "My my pregnant belly, it was so cute, and now it has this weird flat spot on it," and then when I was pregnant again, with my 4th, like, it happened again, and so I dug and found that their muscles need dopamine, and when you're out in the sunlight, guess what gets stimulated is the dopamine, and so by going out and getting all of this sunlight, it naturally closed, and I didn't do any exercises, and I had my midwife test. She was like,
yeah.
"I can't believe this, but it's closed." And that was without, like, any complicated exercises, like, literally just sunlight. So light is so, so powerful, and then you're like, "Violet light," I'm like, "Yes, of course," and that's the full spectrum of sunlight will have that in it, and just like laying in your bedroom doesn't have that because they don't put it inside of, the LEDs that everyone's using
Yeah,
these days. So you
totally.
had the vision that gave you the answer to to put that together, but that's so interesting that even shining it um in the mouth would influence the belly, like, everything's connected, that makes perfect sense to me, but, someone getting there in a linear way is maybe not so likely, and that your intuitive approach has you landing on things that are totally novel and interesting, so that is so validating, because sometimes I'm like, "What? That's just too good to be true." Like, can we really just use shine a light and have something that
I know, right?
people work years and years and years on? Because 'Cause I've been told that, like, "Oh, I had friends telling me your belly will never be the same. Like, "Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, that happened to me," and, like, 8 years later, it's, like, almost better.
yeah.
And I'm like, "How about 1 summer of sunshine?"
Yeah. Well, that's so good because you stumbled across I know I saw that article, which I think I loved it because it's like it's so good. You came across it and you found that healing, and I think, I've seen Lindsay, Cantu post about something and similar, and I feel like it's so simple and it's so that's that phrase, right? It's too good to be true. It's so good it is true, right? It's like, oh, but I mean, I love collaborate. Well, you're doula, an amazing, educator, and I love collaborating with likewise, like pelvic floor therapists who really help a lot of people with this, especially moms
Mhm.
postpartum,
Yeah.
and other massage therapists that help. Um, and so there are really great resources out there. And I think there is a lot about, to say about breath work and these things, but there's
Mhm.
just some people when I would see that they've tried all these things, or maybe they'd never tried anything. And yeah, 30 seconds of violet light on the maxilla, the front of the
Mhm.
palate, the front of the roof of the mouth. That's all it takes in most
Mhm.
people. Sometimes you need to do it, like you said, you need to do it repetitively for a while. But how wild is it that the brain gets nourished and we heal, right? Well, that is like a beautiful thing. So I feel, oh, the other thing that I saw violet light help with stumbled across this realization is primitive reflexes. So,
Oh.
these reflexes that we, kind of should go away. That's the way that we mostly talk about it. Like
Mhm.
if somebody has that Moro reflex or the startle, or if somebody's toe walking, where kids are we're toe walking or adults are toe walking, it might not be a rigid Achilles tendon. It could be because your body is stuck through various reasons in a pattern where the brain can't let those areas go. So thank God for people like the Muscatova, institute where I know Pam Curley, she's the co-founder of that institute, and I've interviewed her. She helps people with exercises that help them through this, or Josh Matson at
Mhm.
Infinity Centers in Iowa. I'm going out to his place in May to train up his like team of like 30 people about my
Oh,
full
great.
force system.
Oh,
But I love
amazing.
the work he's doing with primitive reflexes and other, neurodevelopmental issues with all
Mhm.
kinds of lasers. And I love that. So he's using lasers too. And I just found that red light is amazing for healing things and blood flow, dopamine. It's so good. But for those of us with like tongue tie and nervous system dysregulation and cortisol spikes and all the things, purple light is so gentle and healing, and it's like a counselor. Whereas like red light's a coach. Like some people need the coach, right? Like go
Yes.
do it.
Mhm.
And some people they're like, whoa, that's a lot. And so then violet light comes through like a gentle empath counselor that's like, you know, what would it look like to you if you walked over there and you sat down under that tree and just took in some, some of that amazing ionic exchange? Like that sometimes I think violet light just settles. So I think that's why it helps with the brain so much that it gets the abs to come together. But obviously I'm picking out like just two things that violet light is good for, and that's super simplifying it. But I love
Yeah.
it when we can get easy answers because like the theme of earlier, I'm like, there's gotta be a quick way, like
Mhm. Yeah, and I think about that with sunlight and babies and, like, why are children's abs not coming together and, like, why are a lot of these developmental things not happening, and so much of the sensory time that they would be out in nature, earthing, catching all
yeah,
of that sunlight, and instead they're, spending that time indoors. They've been told not to bring their babies out in the sunlight for the first 6 months of life, and
yeah,
that is actually a very key time developmentally. The musculoskeletal system should be coming together. So during that first 6 months of life, when you look at research, it's like, oh, the very best outcomes are in babies who are getting 2 or more hours outside per day. But
yeah,
then when you like look at the American Academy of Pediatrics, they're like, oh, ask your doctor before you bring your baby outside.
yeah,
So there's very different messages in the guidelines and clinical recommendations that are out there versus what's happening in the world of research, where you're actually looking at what are actual healthy mamas and healthy babies doing, and what's happening with them. So that's a really amazing difference there that I think of that, again, like, has all of that light. And, you met with your mention of primitive reflex integration, I just also have to give a shout out to, my friend and colleague, Amanda Contestankin, and I did a interview with her about she's a rhythmic movement, trainer, and huge amount of work in, the field of quantum biology and neurodevelopment. So she's a person that you could definitely connect with that could be a great podcast guest for you. I'd love to connect you because I'm now realizing, oh, your guys' work is actually very
oh, yeah,
similar because she mostly deals with people who are in complete chronic pain, and helping them to figure all of that out using primitive reflex integration. Because it is true, there are, some people are so rushed. They're just like rushed through all of the stages, like rushed to the tests, rushed to like getting weighed. Um, Right, I think of that, like, so many moms who are worried about tongue ties are sometimes just worried about it because 'cause they're like, "Oh, my baby's not gaining weight." So, they told me that they must have a tongue tie because they must not be feeding well, but it's like, the assessment wasn't like, "Oh, it looks like your baby isn't thriving." It was like, the number on the scale says that we should assess these things, um, which is just a very different compared with, the empathic approach of what is this baby really saying with its whole being?
yeah. And I think you mentioned chronic pain, which it's true. It's like or I it made me think that a lot of people like maybe the moms bring their babies or dads bring their babies because of the feeding issues and sometimes open mouth, like, the baby sleeps with their mouth open and somebody, usually a lactation consultant's referring to me or things like that. But, some people, like, whether it's the older kids or adults, like, they didn't go to, like, the dentist or airway provider or whoever it is because they knew about those issues. Like, they didn't know they maybe had TMJ, like jaw issues, or they maybe had, like, bad headaches or, that neck pain that, somebody they went to somebody who said, "What do you think about your sleep?" And these questions they'll ask them, and then they'll say, "Oh, yeah, you may have a tongue tie, you may have narrow maxillae, you may have need for palate expansion." So by now, because I'm like this niche specialist who gets people referred to me, although, some people will reach out to me off of a podcast or the work I do with some others in consulting. A lot of people, they've already been to a lot of people, but, usually a lot of people go because of pain. They're like, "I have horrible neck pain," and then they end up finding out it's because of something else. So I see a lot of people with chronic pain who, um, you just are at wit's end, and, like, nobody can really handle that over and over and over again, especially when you're not only navigating your own health, but you got, like, little ones to take care of or work or whatever else. So it's and then, okay, I'm gonna say, like, I think every name I see here is a woman's name, right? So, the only woman's name it's not a woman here is intentional, but then it says womanhood. So, you are you are no, so, like, I'm preaching to the choir of who knows how hard this is. I know that I'm not tackling the same lifestyle. I can say that because of seeing my wife go through struggles and, picking up where I can and contributing where I can, like, it's better balance in the home is such an important thing. I was reminded of that this morning. This is kind of a weird tangent, but it comes back. I was
Love it.
reminded of that because I was listening to the Goop podcast, Gwyneth Paltrow's podcast, and, she interviews, Chelsea, who's the founder CEO of Frida, and I'm like, "Whoa, no way." The nose Frida came in huge for us with our baby to get
Okay.
that, right? And then it's a lot of parents, so many parents, the Frida. You know the Frida because it's what got out that congestion, or maybe you use the upside down, um, rinse for the perineum if you're a mom or something like this. She is such a great educator on fertility as well as, resources that help when your baby's struggling, and then also starting to educate the men, the husbands, dads on how we can contribute. So I look at how many times I've fallen short in my own life, but then really soon on, I'm like, whoa, I just need to come through. And so, the tangent coming back is that I've seen really a lot of, like, parents come in together and we're journeying through how to help their families together, and I'm teaching the dad how to do body work. I check his tongue, his mouth, teach him how to do body work on his baby, and maybe they're both gonna do it, and maybe that's not every instance, but, it's like a lot of parents don't know they have these issues, and then I check in their mouths, and then they're like, "Oh my gosh, do you mean that my tension here could be the reason that I've had debilitating neck pain for decades?" I'm like, "I'm so sorry, but yes, and then let me see what
Mhm.
I can help in the moment," and then maybe they'll come in after that to see me, but, um, so I just know that pain is more than just a physical thing. We need emotional, we need spiritual, we need nutritional, we need quantum help, we need all these things. So wherever I can, you know, bridge those gaps, wherever I can integrate, bring disciplines together within my own floor of the mouth system and my functional mandibular diaphragmatic integration system that I'm now teaching. Um, I just want to curate because, like, I just want to make it easier for people, especially when there's pain like that, especially when somebody is, postpartum, has this pain they're dealing with and they're just trying to, like, make it and let alone care for the new one or the other ones. And so, some families have these amazing systems of support and then some don't. So, I just know that, like, when I can help someone out of pain, it could be the lifeline that helps them think more clearly so that they can recruit the resources they need to tackle the other things. So I know that that's also what can be overwhelming. I've when people are like, "What do you mean I have a tongue tie or my baby has it? Does that mean I need to go do?" I'm like, "Whoa, let's take a second here because you might need to do things, but in the moment, let's just see because even though that's the detail and that's the info, there's going to be a way for us to make some change." And um, the look of relief I've seen on, like, some moms, faces when they've had a tongue tie release and it just didn't produce the result that it needed, but that all we did was release the thyroid. I'm going back to that, right? Release the
Mhm.
thyroid and that retrognathic mandible went from, like, this to
Mm.
forward. Or,
Mhm.
maybe it is the diaphragm or maybe it is the sphenoid and whatever it is, like, then it works. Baby can
Yeah.
laugh and, whew, now they can think again. So, I feel like helping those nervous systems regulate is like
Mhm.
mission 1, and that can come in different ways, but it's like, yeah, we need some way to find, um, that kind of relief and support so that we can really, not live in that state of urgency or, but, on the flip side also, what I've really made sure to do is say to some might say, like, "What do you think about this?" I always wanna be honest and say, "Yes, that is a pretty, narrow maxilla," right? There is,
Mhm.
like that is such a narrow palette. I believe bodywork can do extraordinary things, and I've seen palettes that are, like, this narrow widen through
Yeah.
bodywork, but I'm gonna be clear too and say, like, I'm, fairly certain that you would benefit your little one is going to benefit greatly from and maybe need palette expansion. However, let's see what we can do right now. So it's just really
Yeah.
good to, like, discuss what's going on, be very clear, give the info, and then also say, "But there's options."
Yeah.
So
This is
mhm,
amazing, that you lead into that because I've been connecting with a dentist who does palate expansions who is so passionate about all of this. You 2 would make a great pair. I'll also try to
mhm,
connect you there, because he had a palate expansion and he was like, "Whoa, my body was actually
yeah,
not ready for that much oxygen," because this all this narrow, the body will do that when it's kind of like recoiling from the world and having things
mhm,
tamped down. He's like, "There's a metabolic reason." So for him, he's like, metabolic health needs to be addressed underneath, um, and so he's very much he's like, "I will give you the surgical option here if that's what you want, but if you're open to it, doing some of this metabolic work first and then see what happens," because, yeah, just going the hard and fast route doesn't always fit the reasons that the body might be very wise in doing what it's doing and that the symptoms presenting that seem like, "Oh, if I could just fix this one thing," but there's actually, like you said, the roots under the roots under the roots under the roots that could be affecting it all together. And so that it's a very harmonious approach where like what you're saying and what he's saying, like sometimes
mhm,
people come, they're like, just fix me. Like, is my spine out of alignment? Just pop it back in alignment and I'll be good to go. Right. And then there's other people who will say, oh, why would you go to a chiropractor? You're out of alignment the very next day. Even though,
mhm,
as someone who works in that field, like, yeah, there's all of these patterns that the fascia, the body needs to have that safety and that ease, and sometimes a little reminder, a little validation, maybe some new light,
mhm. There
which
you
is a
go.
big part of what we do in the,
Right, right, yeah,
working
totally.
in the field of quantum. We're like, oh my gosh, so many people they're just light deficient, right? Like we are under all these indoor lights all the time and they don't have the full spectrum. That is then leading our body to not be able to do all of the things it normally would, not to be able to convert our hormones the way they normally would. So there's so many things into it that's not just like you can't just always have the surgical
Yeah.
solution, even though that seems easy, it's not always there. So I so appreciate
Yeah,
your
totally.
perspectives on all of this and sharing your stories here. For those who came in late, I hope you go back and catch the replay once it's published because Neil told some amazing stories about very things that you would not necessarily expect to have happen in a chiropractor's office. Um, and being able to be healed without even a physical intervention. being taking place because of other ways of connecting with the body.
Yeah, I was gonna say that the one other story came up, on this person. She's a person who's come in, um, and I moved to Santa Barbara, so I no longer get the privilege of caring for her. It's too far away, but she's shared at one of my trainings before as a patient who's, both experienced the benefit of my work, but also more, um, what is transformed in her since she experienced the change. So I'll talk about, like, for sure, oh, yeah, bioresonance healing, right? I've done a lot of frequency medicine and frequency therapy over the years, and I was administering a frequency to her body via a device that picked up on what she needed, and it's the Rife technology, right? Rife frequencies that Wilhelm Reif created that were known to deal with things like cancer and gout and all these other things. So anyways, that's a rabbit hole to, like, mention lightly, and let's just say, um, that when it came to, a lot of people know about binaural beats and Brain FM, and I mentioned Newcom, and these neuroacoustic companies are amazing, right? So I'm an advisor to another neuroacoustic company called Sound Health, to where it's a headband wearable. I was going to talk about this, but it's a headband wearable that you put on your head, and it maps the face, it scans your sinuses, and it's like a CBCT scan, right? That's a cone beam
Whoa.
X-ray. That's standard of care. That's the gold standard of imaging right now for the airway field of any field, right? If you're an ENT, a dentist, whoever, if you're evaluating the airway, whether, and it's not for a baby, right? But it's for older kids and adults, then you're going to probably get a cone beam X-ray. But this company, Sound Health, decided to map it, via sonar, right? Sonic waves, maps
Whoa.
out this area, and then delivers vibroacoustic resonance to these areas
Hmm.
to dislodge the sinuses and clear out congestion, but also improve the airway. And um, so I love that technologies like that exist. I went down the rabbit
Hmm.
hole of sound because I'm gonna interview, John Stewart Reed on the podcast
Oh,
tomorrow
great.
morning, and I saw him recently on the Earth Ancients podcast. I know
Hmm.
Cliff, the person who does that podcast. We're meeting up in the Bay Area in a couple weeks, he and I, Cliff and
Yeah.
I. And I know John's been on the Quantum Biology Collective
Yeah,
podcast.
he is. That's one of our most popular,
Totally,
most
right?
downloaded, most
Yeah.
rewatched, re-listened. People email us about that all the time. People love his work.
Yeah, and so in 2009, I heard an acoustic engineer speak, and he was influenced by the work of John Stewart Reed and his cymoscope, and the invention that John created, which turns sound into visible,
Yeah.
manifestation. So, and now they have that. John created the app, which people can download. This is cool stuff. But anyways, I was first influenced 16 years ago or 17 years ago, and so I have, started in the sound healing journey then. And then I went into chiropractic, and then I became what I became. It was like a fusion between a chiropractor, osteopath, craniosacral fascial therapist, and movement educator. And anyways, those words are too many, but basically an interdisciplinary healer. Um, but now I'm kinda going through the end of the rabbit hole to, put the floor for the understanding that I've come up with, that I received through downloads, into these companies so that I
Yeah.
can go out and help a lot more people. So I'm so excited to talk to John tomorrow about his work. But with this patient, I played a frequency for anxiety.
Mm.
She had a tongue tie release and palate expanded and was getting ready for jaw surgery because at 50 years old, um, she organs out of alignment, rigidity in her body, tried every intervention, and it wasn't working. And so a couple years after my daughter realizing she had a tongue tie, I realized that this patient had one, and it was an aha moment. She got assessed properly, and it turns out her airway was a pinhole. No
Mm.
wonder she would go home, and at the end of work where she taught kids, she would collapse to the floor and pass out before ever getting to her bed for years.
Wow.
That's her state. After this work that she had done, my body work, but those other procedures, she got her life back.
Hmm.
Vitality, but it's a hard journey to go through what she went through. It's not for everybody,
Yeah.
but she really needed the jaw surgery. So anyways, but I was trying to release her hyoid, that's the throat bone, talking about the voice, right? Vocal
Yeah.
cords, talking about the thyroid, and a lot of these babies with retrognathic mandibles, or even there's so many of us need our hyoid released. It's the throat bone. It's a floating bone. So I work on that so much to help it. And in fact, I'm teaching like novel ways to release it. But this person, like the body work wasn't working. So I used my frequency device, picked up the fact that she had the need for that frequency that combats anxiety, and
Mhm.
instantly the muscles and fascia loosened and the hyoid shifted into a better alignment. And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, yeah, thank goodness for body work. But in this moment, she needed that. So,
Mhm.
um, and yeah, that's a good example though of somebody who, without her leaning into those like alternative therapies and lymphatic work, and she just pursued a lot that helped make sure that this went well for her. The visceral work, the organ releasing that I did and others did, it's what made it doable because a lot of people go through these processes and sometimes they experience dramatic results, but sometimes their bodies aren't brought to a supple state to where these interventions help instead of making things more rigid. So that's why one of the other kind of like goals that I have that I'm doing now is this symposium that I'm presenting at this weekend and other speaking engagements, and then is putting my floor four model into institutes and organizations to make it standard of care, because then anybody with a tongue tie, anybody with palate expansion, anybody that ever has jaw surgery, if they have someone who does the floor 4, or they the course is on its way, the floor 4 will be out soon, where people can follow along on them with themselves. So there's gonna be these levels of, for anybody with the tongue in the floor of the mouth, this can help you, or
Mhm.
for practitioners, this can help you so you can help them, and for offices, institutes, and organizations, this is gonna help you so that your practitioners know what to do to help people help themselves. I think
Oh,
agency
that's such a big vision. I love that big,
in
big vision.
2026, it's happening. So
Yeah.
I've see the way it's unfolding. That's why I'm so eager to train more people and to create teachers who can carry this work, because I have loved to do this for like 18 years, um,
Yeah.
9 years to do the specific airway work, but um, where I still love, helping the mom who brings in her 2 kids and helping the baby and the 3-year-old, and I'm like, I just will never not love that, but I can feel what's coming, and I just need to make sure that I'm creating enough space to move these ideas out. Um, because they came to me, I didn't create it. I couldn't have intellectually come up with this. No way. I'm not that
Mhm.
intelligent. My wife is way more brilliant than I am. Dawn Bulchandani. You should follow her. She's about to finish her dissertation on embodied validation. So anytime I say the word
Oh.
validation, it's because
Mhm.
I learn well from her. Of course, I look back at life experience too, but
Mhm.
she's brilliant. So her work on embodied validation, and she's using haiku, the poet, the art of poetry, to help explain this in any ways. She's on the precipice of creating that great work, but I think that, it's like the more ideas can get out there, the more they can really fly. Because I just whenever I see somebody come in and they haven't had the floor of the mouth released through the kidney or whatever it is, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, if they only knew that just one little thing could create a dramatic change."
Mhm.
So I got frustrated with myself thinking that, and so finally I made the goal, last year, to make it a reality. So I'm really hopeful that it gets out
Yeah.
there
Good
to
for
many more
you.
people.
Good for you and good for everyone else. How long does a session take?
So it could be as little as a half an hour for people, especially
Mhm.
virtual. We do like an hour for the first time and then a half an hour for follow up unless they want to do longer.
Yeah.
In person, an hour is a really good container of time. I mean, I
Mhm.
have somebody who came in right for 3 3-hour sessions over 2 days. A lot of people. So what I really love is when people want like dramatic, accelerated healing,
Oh.
when it's something I can bring them. If we do that kind of cluster approach, some people will come in, fly in, and they'll do 3 3-hour sessions over 2 days with that one
Mhm.
hour of integration time at the beach. Or some people, they'll come in for a 3 hour system reset session, because 3 hours is an amazing amount of time to really thoroughly investigate, address, and then teach them how to hopefully sustain that alignment or that freedom. But some, they're going to come in for a 90-minute. I'm just like, I'll work with whatever time frame,
Yeah.
and and just, we can find out a lot and accomplish a lot in a short amount of time.
Yeah, and that's what you're teaching practitioners as well, how to
Yeah.
do that kind of session with people. Amazing. Okay,
Yeah.
one more question and then I'll let you go, which is tell us a little bit about those beach integration sessions because that is
Oh,
just
yeah.
lovely.
Oh, I pinch myself. I'm gonna show a reel. I'm gonna post the reel, but like
Okay.
today, something I've done for 10 years is whenever I'm at the beach and I find kelp, right?
Yeah.
I get a long enough strand and I jump rope. And it's my favorite thing to do. I can't stand regular jump ropes because if you can hold kelp and you can jump rope with it, it's amazing because 'cause you're grounding, you're in
Yeah.
tune with nature. So I've the guy was with me, he hadn't jump roped in forever, let alone jump rope with kelp. So it was this cool moment where he's jump roping with kelp, and it's a really fun experience. So,
Mhm.
but I use a framework that I kind of came to me again, it was like the year before my daughter was born, so about 10 years ago, and it's called the 5 M's, and it's movement, meditation, mapping, musing, and meditation? No, I said that, so I'll start over. It's mapping, meditation, movement, music, and musing. So,
Mm,
it's an interlocking flow between these practices that I weave together to help people integrate, and so
mhm,
first of all, I just love that practice. It's been something I do, and it could be in 5 minutes or it could be in an hour. But when I'm doing these sessions and I have that integration time, we go to a beach here in Santa Barbara and we spend time journeying together,
mhm.
journals out, going for a walk, meditating, and I'll find where is it that they need instruction. They might need movement education, and we release the sternum while they're at the beach, and then we'll video that so they can follow that home,
Wow.
or we jump rope, or we um, find where somebody's just not able to connect. And this is amazing moment was like a couple weeks ago where somebody came from Texas and she was pretty biohacker into all these things, and I'm like, yeah. So a lot of people have found me through the Ben Greenfield podcast, and so um, she like, the moment that stood out to her the most was when we were at the beach going through all these things and the healing areas in her body, and then I said, "Okay, look, I see that beam of light going over the Pacific. If you would just bear with me right now and let's go through a visualization." And I had us walk on the beam of water out to the because it's at sunrise, right? It's right when the sun comes up. That's when I do these. And so
Beautiful.
the sun, I said, "Go ahead and jump onto the sun, and as you're standing on the sun, turn around and look at yourself." Right here where you're at. And she couldn't see herself.
Hmm.
So I'm like, okay, well, go ahead and open your eyes and just look at your hand, look at your arms. And, you know, if you had a mirror, you would do this with a mirror. I'm like, I've had so many times where I couldn't see myself clearly. In her, it was self worth. That's why she couldn't see herself. So she
Wow.
said later she realized when she got up on the sun, turned around and looked at herself, the more she could see herself, the more in herself she became.
Mhm.
And that's the one main thing she took away with our time, which I'm like, "Wow, that's cool." I mean, I sometimes I think we're gonna release fascia. Sometimes I think I'm gonna teach retro walking and walking backwards, but for tongue tie, which is called asymmetrical retro walking. It's a different pattern for people, but all these things, and then it'll surprise me what people need. So I just always wanna tune into what somebody actually needs versus what we might think they need or I might think they need, because what they need really supersedes what I think they need, and as long as I'm tuned in and I ask enough questions and I'm silent and still enough, it comes through. And then I'm so happy when that happens because I'm like, "Okay, this is what they came for, and
Yeah.
if we can have this happen, I'm so happy."
Oh, wonderful. That's so beautiful. Okay, where can people find you? Of course, your Substack is a great
Yeah.
entry point, a little growing seed of goodness
Mhm.
there. What's the best way for people to reach out to you, to learn more, connect with you, get support, learn?
Yeah, totally. Jump there, and of course, like, you see my name, Neel Bulchandani, Dr. Neel Bulchandani on Instagram. That's where I'm most, like, there and active. Facebook, and then we have a podcast. It's called Compromise to Alchemize. So, but whether it's through Instagram, Substack, or you find my website, which is just neilbulchandani.com, just reach out. And I so look forward to seeing any of you. And some people click through and they're like, I don't even know what to pick. working on the website, right? So, like, do I choose virtual? Do I choose system reset? When in fa when I don't know. When in doubt, reach out. So just shoot me a message. And you can totally look and see what I'm doing and see the
Mhm.
updates and find out more about my Santa Barbara course that's coming up. And then I've got some other events that are going on too.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much. That was really eye-opening and really inspiring. Thank you so much.
You're
We'll
so
see you
welcome.
again
Thank you.
soon.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll be seeing you again and doing more collaborations in the future.
Thanks
Good
again.
luck with all your workshops and travels coming up.
Thank you so much.